waiting around for the weekend, figuring which club is sneaking. Fancy drinks and $50 cover charge.
Welcome back to another series of podcasts here from Hyperballad Studios in Brooklyn, New York. My name is James Campion, and this is Eric Hutchinson.
That is all true.
All of this is true as we go through Sounds Like This for the 15th anniversary of this wonderful record, your first full-length one. And so this podcast is mainly for going through the themes. And when we've done these podcasts in the past, whether it's Modern Happiness or Class of 98, there is a specific theme. This one is just songs you had built up from, we talked about in the last podcast, from 2001 till this record finally came out in 2008. And so I guess, and this is one of the things I sort of mined for the liner notes for the vinyl release, and that is, you're so impossibly young here. I mean, we all have to start somewhere. So tell me, how old were you here, and what were the first song? How old were you when you wrote the first songs that ended up on this record?
Yeah, it's funny because I was impossibly young, but I was still, by rock and roll standards, kind of old. Like,
when are we gonna make it, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get signed to Warner Brothers Records until I was 27. So this album came out, I was 27, touring around. But I wrote rock and roll when I was about to turn 21. So I'd kind of spent, these songs are really from my early 20s, and a lot of them are about relationships and frustrations. But yes, I was young. I was younger. I'm still young.
Yes. So a couple of things I did notice about this record. First of all, and you said this to me before, I believe, you hate fade-outs. Is that correct? Not a big fan of fade-outs?
I don't love fade-outs. I found some sort of email I had sent to like one of the producers I was working with that were like my manifesto of like,
no
fade-outs, no beat 3 organs.
Oh, really?
I don't know. There was a couple. The things that I felt were I was trying to avoid as a songwriter. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why, other than I was listening to a lot of rap music at the time, and I don't think there was fade-outs then.
Yeah, there is a hip. I think you mentioned in the article, when I reread it, I mentioned it in the last podcast, I wrote a piece around this time, my first full-length piece on Eric, and you said it was, pop music with a hip-hop beat. Mm-hmm. And you were going for a specific sound here, clearly. Do you think you achieved it?
No. Probably not.
Why not?
I think in my head it was more hip-hop. It was...
You think it's dated?
I don't know.
I mean, all records are snapshots.
For sure.
Would you ever I'll phrase it this way. Do you listen to this now? You just listened to the record right here in the lobby.
I listened to it, yeah.
So would you revisit any of these songs for any reason? Do you think, I think I could do this song more justice.
I thought about doing that, of like a Sounds Like This now kind of record or something.
Because
but
Eric Hutchinson sounds like this.
I don't know that anybody really wants that other than me, like... And I think if you show any piece of art to any artist, they might be like, well, there's one thing I would change in here. It's just human nature. I'm a different person the next day from the day I wrote something. I feel a very, very different person from when I made this album. Yes, I loved that it was a snapshot of me then, and I heard all these things that I would not think to do now, and it was very nostalgic to listen to the whole record in its entirety. I hadn't done that in forever, so.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, as a writer, my first book, I was just mentioning this yesterday, I could not write like that. Like, I wouldn't even deign to do it. I get mad at that guy, because I'm like, wow, that's bold. That's a bold choice I would never do now. So I wonder if you hear that when you hear, in the last podcast, you said you hear a lot of enthusiasm. We talked naivete. Do you hear a lot of, wow, I wouldn't do that now?
No, not really. I think, I was definitely like mining my personal life more than maybe I might now, but I think my music's gotten more. It was a pretty honest record that I made. These songs all came from a real place. I don't know. I'm glad I did it the way I did it, and that was what was so important to me, was I was just trying to make an honest piece and actually finish it. So That's what this was to me.
Yeah, and I think you don't want to change it because it is a snapshot of that time. I know we mentioned Alanis Morissette in the last episode because she, was a label mate of yours for a short spate, and she re-recorded Jagged Little Pill 10 years later, and it's a cute idea, and of course, ran out to get it because I love that record, but it's nothing because she was so furious, she was so unknown, she was so gutsy, and there's just something different when you visit something.
I mean, rock and roll pop music is a young person's game because there's some of what makes rock and roll and pop music so great is the naivete. It's that I don't exactly know how to do this thing, but I'm gonna just throw everything I have at it, and you can feel that. And like people, I think I'm a more accomplished songwriter now, and I understand how to make music better, but it doesn't mean my music is necessarily more enjoyable to somebody. It's just maybe a little bit more polished or skillful or something, but still these are the songs that people often want to hear the most.
Yeah, and so for me, listening back, it's been such part of your canon. I mentioned in the last podcast that, there are certain songs like Food Chain or Oh that just in fact, I feel, I might have shared this with you, but I'll do it for the audience and share it with you again. Your version of Oh a couple of months ago when you played City Winery here in the city is my favorite version of that song. I wish I taped it. You just sort of grew into the song the way Joni Mitchell grew into Both Sides Now. She wrote,
I love this. More comparisons to Joni Mitchell during
right.
this podcast.
But you know what I mean. Like you write a song like Both Sides Now when you're 21, 22. It's a woman thinking back on her life and rediscovering what went wrong and what went right. And so Oh has a lot, we'll get to that later, but it has a lot of that in it. And I think, okay, here's Eric playing something he wrote when he was 22, and now he's older, and time has passed, and so he's interpreting this song as a man playing it now. So going back and listening to that, listen to this record, that must have been a revelation for you.
A little bit. I sing so many of these songs still, and I just did this project where I was handwriting lyrics for people who had requested them, and so it was like almost, I was writing out a lot of these older songs. It was like rewriting my journal kind of or something. It was very much like writing it out in my actual hand, and so I hear them a lot, but I don't spend the time to reflect on what they actually mean or what I'm actually singing. And yeah, I hear it and I sound to me like a confused, lost person who's looking for answers. This was also the record I made about a lot of the women I was dating right before I got together with my wife. Like as soon as I got finished making this record, I got together with my wife, Jill. We were just dating then, and so this is really like a line in the sand of like my young adulthood.
Yeah.
And after this I moved to New York and I got together with my wife and I started touring around, and this was me before I sold out, if you will.
Yeah. So speaking of lyrics, you once told me, I was just listening to this when we were doing the podcast for Before and Afterlife. You said that you made a conscious effort not to be hard on yourself or say negative things about yourself anymore. This record seems to be replete with this.
Yeah.
You're very hard on yourself here.
Yes, absolutely. This was one of the records. This one, I believe it was after my second record, I said, well, this is part of it. I went out, get mad at myself, hate myself, write a song about how I'm a bad person and I feel guilty.
All these people who now know I'm a jerk, and it's a setup, and I gotta change my clothes, concealing all this evidence for everybody knows what I've done and what I'm gonna do again.
And now take that song on the road and sing it all night and sing it every night for a bunch of strangers and continue to perpetuate that feeling about myself. And I got old enough to a point and I did enough therapy that I was like, maybe this isn't that healthy. Maybe this isn't what I want to be getting out of things. And there was a lot of musicians that I grew up that were listening to. The big one that comes to mind is Ben Folds was very hard on himself in a lot of his Ben Folds 5 songs. And I think it was a place originally where I wasn't in therapy yet. It was a place where I could explore how I felt. But yeah, there's a lot of shame in the lyrics, I think, and a lot of like frustration. And I wasn't my best self, and I was hurting people's feelings because that's what you do when you're dating. And I was just bouncing around a lot at this point.
It also introduced the theme that you use quite a bit in your work. So you hear it in your opening, and it's one of the things I wrote about in the liner notes. You could hear where Eric Hutchinson's going to go. So it's not just the snapshot. I'll give an example. There are a lot of storytelling songs on this record. You have Outside Villanova, Rock and Roll. Oh, these are songs where you're speaking about other people. You're making a point, maybe about yourself, but you're doing it by describing other people. Like in the case of Rock and Roll, it's about the way people get ready to go out. It's a fun song, but it also is the underbelly of that is like maybe they don't really want to be doing this, or maybe they're searching for something they don't have that they can't fulfill themselves, and all these other things. We'll go on to that later, but you know what I mean? So they're storytelling songs.
Waiting around for the weekend, figuring which club is sneaking. Fancy drinks and $50 cover charge. Lately it's been a big hassle, Heineken to Newcastle, to make sure he's fitting in and living large. Disregard the lies that he will tell him what he's probably like, cause it's not hard. His charm is gonna get him through the night. 'Cause if you wanna rock, he rocks. If you wanna roll, he rolls. He can roll with the punches.
Talk about that. Did you make a conscious effort into writing like that?
I don't think I was doing much of a conscious effort of anything back then. I was just trying to write as many catchy songs that I was proud of as I could. And I wasn't thinking, oh, this one's... The one thing I will say I made a conscious effort of was to make more up-tempo songs, because before this album, I had even more depressing songs about how I was a bad person, and they were slow ballads, and I would get up to play them live, and I would be bored during it. Like, I just never wanted to be that sort of an artist that was doing the sort of shoegazing, super sad
So you recorded,
ballads.
yeah. So you recorded in Elliott Smith's studio,
right, exactly. Like Elliott Smith or something. Yeah, it was like those are beautiful songs, but when I was trying to play my slow songs live, it was not exciting to me, and so I did spend a lot of time consciously trying to make songs that would be big and I could stamp my foot to, and that I could play live and have approach with energy. So I think that's what I was throwing, but I was fumbling around in the dark to a certain amount of like, I don't know how to make a song, I just do it and I don't know what my process is yet. So I was just happy whenever one would come along, and I don't think I approach things that way anymore. I think for better or for worse, I've found what my style is and I know how it works and where I'm going to take it. And but back then I was really discovering it. So
yeah, it's reflective of playing live. Like I say, woodshedding and trying the songs out, watching them succeed, watching them fail. Like you said, with Rock and Roll, people coming up, hey, what's that? So it's coming through on the record. We've already talked about it. You have all the songs, no fade outs. Now I know you don't like it as an aesthetic point, but you end a song, unless you want to do a live fade out. If you want to do a live fade out, but you end songs cold live. And then secondly,
that's what I was used to doing.
There are no ballads on this record. I just noticed that when I listened to it again, and I said, well, maybe he didn't want to do it live because he'd lose somebody, and that's exactly
I'm the king
what
of the mid-tempo. And
yeah,
true. there's no ballads. The closest to a ballad would be Back to Where I Was, but even that I wanted it to move. And I wrote down 3 albums and artists that were really influential to me.
I was going to ask you about that. You want to check your notes?
I've got them down.
Okay,
I've got them.
Go.
So he's not so popular to talk about right now, but Kanye West had made his first record, and then he made his second album, Late Registration, which he made with this producer named John Bryan, who had done a lot of film orchestrations. He did work with Fiona Apple, and he was like my dream producer, John Bryan. And he made this record with Kanye, and he brought all of this lush kind of indie pop sensibilities to Kanye's hip hop stuff, and that was just like, oh, this is the world I'm trying to do. He brought in strings and he brought in these interesting orchestrations and these weird little Moog sounds and old synthesizers, and he brought like a real musicality to Kanye's stuff, and I just was obsessed with that album, Late Registration. I was also listening a ton to this album, the Clarence Greenwood recordings by Citizen Cope, which was another person who was kind of melding songwriter work with hip-hop beats. And then, I mean, the person that really was helping me find my voice, and like what this album was trying to be more than anything was Stevie Wonder, who I loved since I was a kid, but at this point in my life I had really started to dig deep into all of Stevie's music. And Stevie's music's not that fast necessarily. It's mid-tempo, and the ballads he does have ballads in his work, but in general, so much of his work is sort of a mid-tempo groove that you can groove in, but it's not necessarily dance music all the time, but it's not slow music. And that was so much in my head of like the way Stevie Wonder sang and the messages he was saying were just incredibly inspirational to me. And that's what I was trying. I was trying to make a Stevie Wonder record.
Right. It's like I always think of Stevie as soul atmospheric music, because he made these gorgeous albums, as everyone knows. In the '70s, he had that great run, and it was funny because I was thinking about when you and I saw Summer of Soul, and we saw him pop out at the very beginning playing the drums. He's so young. It's that transition between little Stevie Wonder, Motown, and the Stevie Wonder that would become an icon. And
Right.
I remember you just perked up watching it. You're like, look at him go! And I could hear, and I think I probably put in my notes, specific touch tones, sonic touch tones to Stevie. I'm like, oh, Stevie would do that. I think I actually said it driving in here.
I was trying to do what Stevie did, except that Stevie Wonder is a musical genius on a whole other level and was creating this whole genre and how to make a record like this.
Right.
So I had a huge blueprint to work off of, but I can't play instruments the way Stevie can. I can't sing like Stevie can, but I was doing the best that I could with that. But there's a ton, the way I did the vocals, especially all the backing vocals, it's a ton of just sort of free form singing. That's the biggest thing that I think Stevie brings from his vocals is joy. And I don't actually hear joy in my vocals on this record, but I do hear like I'm pushing and I'm trying to bring enthusiasm.
Oh, if I only just begin, understand it, that's because every time I start to change my mind again, gets me back to where I was, gets me back to where I was, and oh, gets me back to where I was.
Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't mention that, because in the making of, and I did make notes on as we go through all the songs, but you did all the background vocals here.
Yeah.
Even the high, almost female level.
I was
of
used to
background
doing that back then. It was, I didn't know any other good singers at that time, and
You're cheap. You're cheap. You already paid for it.
I'm cheap, and I liked doing that part. I was used to doing it, and I felt that was the biggest thing I had to bring to the production was my voice. So, yeah, I don't know. I sang them all. I don't sing them as much. Although one thing we're doing for this album, celebrating this album, is I'm going to be putting out, I am recording one new song that was from this era that I never put out, called Sad Songs. Not Take a Sad Songs,
Okay.
but Sad Songs that I was playing a bunch while I was out on tour promoting this album in 2008. And I never recorded it, and it's my wife's favorite song. And so I'm going to record it with my old band, Jimmy Coleman and Tom Kraske, who I was playing with back in 2008, and we're gonna do it all together. So I was listening to sounds like this, being like, I want to try to produce this song, Sad Songs, as much as I would have back then. And one thing I heard a lot of was like, yeah, there's a ton of my vocals back there, like doing all kinds of silly stuff.
And when you tour this, will you have the guys, the band?
I think we're going to do it as a
recreate it?
trio.
Okay.
The way I was doing it in 2008, where I was kind of just learning to play with a band. I hadn't started working with Elliot Blofeld yet, and it was just it was a power trio, and it was stark, but it was exciting. Like the record was fuller, but this was like a cool. I have a lot of good memories touring this way, so I'm excited to go out and play some shows that way.
This song is off the CD. It's called "Okay, It's Alright with Me." Okay, it's alright with me. Some things are just meant to be. It never comes easily, and when it does, I'm already gone. I'm practically never still, more likely to move until I end up alone. And well, my life continues inching along. When Bernadette comes, I get lost on her time. She's much too sweet, and she's always gonna be. And when I return to her arms and her eyes, it might not be the same, but it's alright with me. Okay, it's alright with me. Some people are scared to see what's happening frequently, but I would never shy from a fight. Heartbeat with a high demand, often we'll go hand in hand, but I'm sick of just starting plans. I wanna spend the rest of my life. When Bernadette comes, I get lost on her time. She's much too sweet, and she's always gonna be. And when I return to her arms and her eyes, it might not be the same, but it's alright with me. It's alright with me. It's alright with me. It's alright with me. Let me hear it, guys. Okay, it's alright with me. Oh, it's alright with me. Oh, it's alright with me. Okay, it's alright with me. Okay, it's alright with me. Some things are just meant to be. It never comes easily, and when it does, I'm already gone.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned it yet, but there is something on Spotify, and I don't have it myself, and I don't know when you released it, but there is something called Sounds Like This Live.
Yes, it was
It's the
never
whole
printed.
record. It's the whole record. You soup to nuts playing this live. Is this back in the trio days you're talking about?
This was sometime during the Warner Brothers stuff. We thought it would be good to have some new sort of music, something new to point to. So I think we in two different pieces, I recorded the songs just live in the studio, like on a day off. So it was kind of like unplugged, really. It was like Sounds Like This unplugged.
Right.
But yeah, that's on Spotify and streaming stuff. I don't think we ever printed it. I think it was just like a download thing. And,
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed,
Yeah,
so I was
haven't listened
excited.
to that one in a long time. But that is certainly, if you want to go back and hear what I sounded like in 2008 when I was just touring around,
Sounds like then.
sounds like then.
Then.
Oh no, no. You don't have to believe me. I'm just speaking my mind. You look lovely as always. You get that all the time. You don't have to believe me. I tell you that I'm impressed, but you should better believe me when I say you deserve the best. Come on. You don't have to believe me, but I'm not gonna lie. I've seen all the attention you get from other guys. And you don't have to believe me, but say you would like your dress. You should better believe me when I say You deserve respect, and it feels like nobody's inside. No access to your pride. You gotta learn to take control. The whole body is a devil's soul. You gotta trust the name, and your mind is worth to say. Before we build this love, please believe that you're good enough. It's all out to believe.
I did want to end this segment with something I wrote about you and then it came out on September 19th, 2007, and I titled it Eric Hutchinson Sounds Like This. I thought that it's just steal right from your record title. And I wrote, and you tell me if this is accurate or close to accurate. You ready? All right. Eric Hutchinson is a rare breed on
Not
all
accurate. I'm sorry, I had to.
No, you had to do
sorry.
it.
Go ahead.
Eric Hutchinson is a rare breed on all counts. A lily-white kid who funks like Stevie Wonder and grooves like a young Michael Jackson. A ruffled-haired road warrior with nary a shouldered chip. And a bright, witty, gregarious sort who portrays the role of lovable loser in both song and story. He's a performer who loves to entertain, a songwriter looking for that magic hook, and a serious musician who openly mocks his musicianship.
Do I think that was me back then?
Yeah.
Definitely. I think, like I said, I feel so lucky that we have become friends and that you saw me back then, that there was a witness to who I was.
I was an archivist.
Yeah. And yeah, I was hungry. I deeply wanted it. I was very ambitious and I had no idea how to do it. And I was just hacking away through the jungle, trying to find a path. And I was also bitter and kind of mean. And you talk about Joe Jackson yelling at the audience. I definitely yelled at the audience a bunch. I was known to like bark at them and kind of get mad at people. And I listen back to some of the recordings now from that era, and I'm just like, oh gosh. Like I definitely turned some people off with that because they were like, this guy is a jerk. But I was just like out there fighting for my life by myself on stage.
Yes.
And everybody was drunk out there, so I was just going for it.
Sir, what's your name in the sort of beige sweater? What is it? Chris. How you doing, Eric? I know during that song you thought I was staring at you. And I was actually, staring at the rude girls behind you, yeah. But what are your names, girls? Who continue talking even though I'm staring at you only while I'm playing that song. What's the deal? Like, are you guys best friends? One of you lives in Oregon. You just saw each other for the first time tonight. You thought, well, when we go to a show. What?
I've seen you before.
Oh, you've seen it before. I know this one. We can skip it. Trust me, you're not missing anything. Let me tell you about Bill.
So you just reminded me. My favorite thing in sound. We mentioned this in the last podcast. The Before I Sold Out live CD EP. There's a great bit where you start a song. You're like, okay. Every time people do live records, they get excited and start clapping when you understand the song, like you know the song. So you prime the audience, and then you start, and they're like not that excited. So you stop them and you're like, come on. You're like producing your own response.
Yeah, I still do that. That still works with audiences. You know, sometimes you got to create your own hype.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I was doing back then.
Right, you're solicitor, you. All right, so that's Eric Hutchinson. My name is James Campion, and we are now going to go through, in this podcast series, on the 50th anniversary of Sounds Like This, each song, and we'll discuss its writing, its composition, its recording, and some of the themes on it. So, you ready for that?
Stick around.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's do this.
Okay, it's alright with me. Some things are just meant to be. It never comes easily, and when it does, I'm already gone. And I'm practically never still, more likely to move until I end up alone at will. My life continues inching along. When Bernadette comes, I get lost on her time. She's much too sweet, and she's always gonna be. And when I return,